Hey guys and girls, Bored Now back with you. On this video, it's gonna be my sort of quick mostly spoiler-free reaction to the new Netflix original movie. It is Fear Street Part 1, 1994, the first of the new trilogy of films which went up today. And if I've got it right, I think that there's going to be a film per week in this trilogy, which is based on a famous series of novels, sort of teen novels, from the same writer as the Goosebumps movie. So it's a similar sort of premise where it's kind of horror, but for like the teen crowd, the pre-teens teen crowds, I'd probably say. And I guess depending on what generation you are or what part of the world you might have heard of these books, you might not have. I know they definitely have their followers, and this is a new trilogy based on them. So I'm gonna do the first movie obviously now, and then I'll get to the other movies in the coming weeks. This is obviously a big Netflix production. I think for a film trilogy on a streaming service, I guess this is quite unique because they are putting them out once a week. I think, if I'm right in saying that. So it's this sort of thing where they've obviously got all three movies in the can, and they're gonna do it once a week. So that kind of keeps the momentum there. It almost has the feel of like a mini style series where you've got one episode per week, but it was, in this case, it's movies, and that's kind of fitting because the vibe with this definitely is like an anthology style series of stories, touching on, I guess, the tone of something like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, or it's sort of riffing at a bunch of things. There's obviously a massive Stranger Things influence. I mean, it's very hard to get away from that nowadays, especially since this is Netflix as well. And over the course of the three movies, there's even a couple of Stranger Things actresses. You've got Sadie Sink in one of the parts in the second film coming up, and in this one you've got Maya Hawke, who of course also appeared in the last season of Stranger Things. But it definitely has its influence in many things. Scream is another sort of influence that kind of shouted out to me when watching this, which I watched on stream tonight, so you can go back and watch that and our reactions if you want. But this is just my quick sort of general like feelings on the movie. So the premise is, then you've got these unexplained murders in this town called Shadyside. And it's sort of like the opening scene, for example, without getting into too many details, it's sort of set in a mall and a more like bookstore, and that's where you see like the Myra Hawke's character. So it's not really too much of a spoiler to say that she doesn't make it very far into the film, but we start seeing what appears to be supernatural things that are motivating these killings. The killings are like unexplained, and they're being committed by people who have shown no signs of killing before, and who go after people who are in their lives, like their friends and that. And we see the high school, and there's this tension between them and this other town, like a neighbouring type town, and it's almost the opposite with that town, where Sunnyvale they are called, which was very distracting watching it because every time they said Sunnyvale, it just sounded like Sunnydale, and it just got kind of repetitive in my head. Then I I naturally thought they were saying Sunnydale, but it's like the opposite that's going on there, where the school in Sunnyvale seems like too perfect sort of thing, where it seems really clean cut and nothing shady going on, and tension sort of spills out between the rival schools and the rival parts of town, and the Sunnyvale students start mysteriously going after the other side of the town, and it all comes down to this group of teenagers. Like one particular group, so you've got this girl Dina who has kind of just going through a rough breakup with her girlfriend Sam, and that's partly over then Sam has started seeing a guy from the other side, from the other school. You've got Dina's brother as well, who's like this sort of internet nerd, and so that's something which is kind of one of those things looking back, because you've got like the AOL technology and the sort of this idea of him being all clued up, being on the internet, but obviously with this being set in 1994. I don't know if I said that, but it's called Fear Street Part 1, 1994, and each of these films is set in a different time period, and sort of working backwards, which is quite a nice idea. But yeah, you got a group of characters. You've got like Dina's best friends as well, her like friend Kate, and ultimately what sort of happens is that they suspect then Sam's new boyfriend is behind this. Then he seems to be running around town with a mask on, or at least that's the fear. And but it obviously turns out to be a lot more complicated than that, and it goes into like this witch basically who's haunting the town, and she's essentially the one behind this, and so the group have to band together to kill the witch, and things escalate from there, or to at least break the curse. And I'll just sum it up by saying I've not read any of the books, so I can't really comment on that. Obviously, people who have read the books, I think, will be satisfied, perhaps, if this lives up to the book, if this is like faithful to the books. And obviously, if not, they might not be too into it. I could only judge it on its own. It's probably fair to say it's not for me. It's not. I'm not really the target audience for this. But to me, it really didn't do much for me. It wasn't terrible. It had its moments. I think it sort of opens with this scene which feels like it is out of like the Scream movie. Like it's almost a very similar opening scene to the way the original Scream opens, where it's very sort of pulpy. You have this killer who's like dressed up in like a skeleton outfit as it is. And you've just got similar beats. You've got a similar like slow motion type kill. So there is a sense of this sort of like postmodern humour that you see in Scream throughout the film. And as someone who's seen a lot of these sorts of films, and as someone who really enjoys the Scream films, particularly the first one, and to a certain extent some of the sequels anyway, I think to me that this just didn't really do it for me, because I've just seen these things just done much better, and the thing is, if it was being ironic, if it was being knowing, I just think the bar has been raised so much on that sort of humour, and the jokes just didn't really land for me. The jokes kind of weren't that good, weren't that sharp, and it just felt like a bunch of ideas sort of rammed down your throat. It was very heavy-handed with like the pop culture references. There was some like there's a really sloppy like joke about Jaws, that they were just hitting you over the head with these. It's almost like a stand-up routine where they're just like throwing ideas at you. Um, and there's sort of very little charm to it. I think they're just trying too hard at times. The film's almost was being too clever for its own good, and the plot did feel very convoluted. I think the tone was really uneven. It was hard to grasp quite what it was going for at times. I think you just had the problem of it being sort of too high budget. Like, if it was a bit more low budget, there would have been more charm. And I think it was almost, yeah, it was too sort of slick. It was too sort of definitely at times CGI. You know, the use of CGI was very much in your face kind of thing, and it just it sort of lost a lot of the imagination that you would want from like monsters in a movie. Um, yeah, it was a strange sort of tone because the ending of the film does go for a more adult type feel, and there is one kill in particular at the end which is really good and really satisfying as a horror kill. And actually, for the character, without revealing who it is, but like the character itself does go out on a high because of that kill. It does feel like, yeah, this was kind of a suitable ending for her. I've given away it's a female. I won't say anything else, but and I think the end of the film won me over a little bit because I think there were some like small arcs for the characters, and the characters were okay. They were quite likable. There was quite nice chemistry between Sam and Dina. I quite like their whole dynamic because obviously they have to start working together to sort this out, and they gradually kind of become close again. And there's sort of a decent little dynamic between the group. I think the problem is that it's just rushing around dialogue so much, rushing around the characters, and it doesn't really give anyone a chance to breathe. But I think the cast are decent enough, they're quite likable, and the characters were okay, especially by the end of the film. It's just they were given very little to do. The film kind of smacks you round the face really with like the 90s music. It's just it gives, because obviously in something like Stranger Things, I mean, they really make the musical moments count. They'll really build to a musical moment, and they'll just make it count. Like the music will be important to a certain scene, but in this case, it like these familiar 90s songs, they just come so thick and fast. It's hard to sort of dilute it, or hard for it to really be that special. And it has its moments, the film, but I mean, probably I'm not the target audience, and the ending, the twist at the end was a little bit disappointing. It was one of those that just felt tacked on because they needed an excuse, obviously, because this is now a trilogy to continue. And I think one good thing is then in the next film the characters will be different, because I think these characters were okay for this film, but I think I would want to see new characters for the next film. So I'm quite happy then we're sort of moving on. And that's kind of all I'm going to say about the film. It wasn't really for me. I didn't hate it, but it. I think I've just seen these ideas and these sorts of films so many more times. Because even accepting it's for a younger audience, maybe I think there's plenty of better sort of stories out there for even that audience, but it's okay. In the end, I come down and say it was average. The characters were decent enough. There was some good kills, but also it was just too much money thrown at it. It was trying way too hard at times, and just pretty bland and middle of the road overall. So I'll give it 5 out of 10. That's my sort of mostly non-spoiler Fear Street review. Fear Street Part 1 review 1994. I will be returning in future weeks with parts 2 and 3 of the trilogy, and notably they will be different eras, different characters. So it's one of those where potentially the different films could stand out. Like 2 could be completely different to the first one, and that does at least appeal as an anthology. But the first film I'll give about 5 out of 10. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, share me out on social media and all the rest of it. But I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.